How I became a pilot, part 5. So today I'm going to not cover so much about the license and everything else. Today I'm going to cover how I became a fan of the Cirrus plane. So when I looked at becoming a single engine pilot, and when I looked on how to use it for business and commercial purposes for myself so that I get from A to B, one of the things which I looked into is that I need something which has an instrument rating, so a plane which can actually do all of that. And I wanted to have the security that in a bad weather situation, I have kind of a fallback plan. So typically this comes down from the past to the option of, instead of a single engine, you go with a multi-engine, because that gives you the safety that if one engine fails, hopefully you can actually take the second engine and that will actually bring you down. It doesn't solve all the scenarios. There are scenarios which are still not being sorted, but at least it gives you that security. The alternative solution is, in a single engine, you can always do an emergency landing, but especially as if the weather is very bad at night, etc., it's not necessarily that easy. And so I thought it's like, hey, if I can have extra safety, then I want to have that. Cirrus has a different approach. Cirrus was one of the first vendors to basically introduce the parachute system, CAPS for short, for all their planes as a standard equipment. So it's not optional. You can get this optional for other planes as well, but it's basically included in the system. And this basically means if anything goes wrong, then you can basically pull the chute, which actually fires off a rocket, and the complete plane comes down on a parachute. There are tons of videos out there on the internet where you can see this when it happened live, and they even by now have a small jet which has the same equipment. As multi-engine planes have typically in certain areas higher maintenance costs, not everywhere. It really depends on what you get yourself into. This is why I actually wanted to stick with a single engine. The other thing about the Cirrus plane, it's basically like more feeling like a cockpit from an airliner or something like that, because you have basically a full glass cockpit, autopilots which can take you everywhere. It's basically more or less as if the plane could fly start to end completely by itself. And this is when you're flying single, then it's a very important part to make it easier. I'm very much into electronics and technology and everything else, and so that was why I said it's like, this is more the plane I'm looking for. Other people like the historical or the more manual approach of instrument rated flying, and I'm perfectly fine with that. Each person has its different point of view on how to do that. I actually like to do my flight planning and everything else so that I can actually use the Cirrus and actually pinpoint the complete route, including the pattern and everything else. That actually takes a lot off my shoulders and actually makes it easier for me to move around, especially when I come to airports, which I've never been before. That way I can exactly put all the markers on the map. It doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to have the autopilot flight. What's your opinion on that? I know that Cirrus is typically a very, very strong discussion point among pilots, where people say it's like Cirrus pilots are lazy, Cirrus pilots are too risky because they always know they have the parachute, etc., etc. What's your opinion? Write it down in the comments. I'm looking forward to it and hope to see you again soon.